Hi, it's Judy Westergaard Jenkins here. Thank you so much for the invitation to teach for the Forest City Decorative Artists. This is your prep video, and I want to go through the supplies you'll need to work on your background so that it's finished before you come to class. Of course, you'll be needing your base coated wood piece, and that is base coated with several coats of spa blue. You'll need a large scruffy filbert. Mine's about 1 inch wide. You could use something a little bit smaller. It doesn't have to be a perfect brush because we're going to be doing some slip slapping of paint onto our wood piece. You'll need a 3/4 inch angle brush, a couple of stencil brushes. These are about 3/8 to 1/2 inch wide. You'll need some stencils. I'm using the Tim Holtz stencils. This is the burlap stencil. I'm going to hold it a little closer to the camera so that you can see that it kind of looks like open gauze. Drywall tape that has little grids will also work. I've also found plastic canvas. It's like a needlepoint canvas at the Dollarama store that works well. The other stencil I have from Tim Holtz is the splash stencil. It looks like droplets of water, or it almost looks like comma strokes. What's important if you use different stencils is that you use stencils that are different in scale. I would call this one small scale and this one a medium scale. You want something that's different and different in size. Of course, the colors you'll need will be snow white, sand, spa blue, shoreline, peacock teal, dioxazine purple, and extender. I use Deco Art Traditions extender. You may also use Americana extender, or Josania's extender is exactly like this, so they all work really well. I like to have a little cup to put my extender in. And let's get these off to the side. You can see I have put my paints out onto my palette. I like to put them in according to value from lightest to darkest. And the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to coat your wood piece with extender. You can do it one or two ways. You can use a large brush and just place it on. You should be able to see a little bit of sheen when I hold this. The light reflects on it. Sometimes that light reflection can cause lots of problems when I'm trying to teach on camera. I've learned to hold my piece at an angle, and it really does make a difference. Notice how I'm stretching out my extender. I don't want this to be dripping wet with extender. Otherwise, it will take days upon days for this to dry, and I want this to dry in short order. So stretch that out and feel your surface. I like to touch my finger to it, and if you see a little bit of sheen as I'm showing you on my finger, that's the perfect amount of extender for your piece. If your finger comes up looking like this, you've got way too much extender. If you have too much extender, simply place a piece of paper towel, clean paper towel, over your piece, and just take a mop brush and lightly tap to the paper towel, and it should take the excess off. Okay, while mine is just the right working consistency, I'm going to pick up my filbert, and I'm going to start out by picking up a couple of different colors. I'm going to slip slap strokes of snow white, spa blue, plus a touch of shoreline and sand. I'm going to let these colors overlap and blend right on the surface. You'll see I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, and I'm just adding bits of color here and there. I've come in a little closer. These values are so close together, it might be a little difficult for you to see till I get some other colors put on. But you can see I'm adding little swipes of white here and there. I don't want to lose my nice spa blue background, but I want to start creating an unusual background technique. Okay, I've got about enough white on. Now I'm going to switch to spa blue plus shoreline. So this is going to be just a tad bit darker than what our background actually is. You can see that splotch that I put in right here. And I'm just letting my colors blend together. The extender keeps the paint open so that I can continue to blend. And I don't want to overblend. I just want the colors to melt together. Without cleaning my brush or dipping my brush in water, I'm going to pick up a little bit of peacock teal, and I'm going to add just a little bit here and there. Maybe half a dozen pieces or areas is all. And now I will wipe my brush onto paper toweling, and I'm going to pick up the color sand. And this seems a little odd. It's very warm compared to all the cool colors that I've established already. But I'm going to put on little swipes of color here and there. And these should really pop out and show on your surface. Keep in mind that the center area will probably be covered up by your Santa, so you don't have to get too much there. It's a good place if you want to just experiment around with your color, you can. At this point, I can feel mine is starting to just tack up a little bit, so I only have a little bit more time to do some additions of color. Once it starts getting really tacky or feels like it's dragging on your surface, time to leave it alone. We can always go back and add a little more color later. Now, let your piece dry till it is totally dry. When you touch your hand to it and it doesn't feel clammy. You can accelerate the drying time with a hairdryer, but then you still need to give it a little bit more time to dry. It's kind of like having nail polish on that you've just had done. Your nail polish is dry, and 2 or 3 hours later, you get a little dent in your polish, and it shows. And that same thing can happen on your wood piece. I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll go on to the next. Okay, you can see my background is dry. There's quite a few splotches of colors. It's almost like a camouflage done in pastels, isn't it? Okay, now it's time to do all of the stenciling. As I said before, you don't have to have my same stencils, but it is important that you have stencils that have a different scale. I've got a smaller scale burlap here. I've got the splash, which is like comma strokes here. The other thing that I want to mention, if you're trying to pick out a couple of stencils to use, notice one's geometric and one's flowing. So that might help you out, and you can always test it out on some paper first. So I'm going to start out using the splash, and I've got a couple colors of paint I'm going to be using, and it's always good to have one or two different brushes to put this on with. I'm going to just hold my stencil at an angle. I'm going to pick a very small amount of shoreline and peacock teal together so that I get just a color that's a mix between the two. I'll blot it on a paper towel because I don't want a whole lot of paint on my brush. Then, using a circular motion, I'm going to apply the stencil. Now, along an edge like this, I'm going to pull this back and take a look. I don't want it really harsh. I want it kind of to be lost and found. Next time, I might pick up a little bit more of the peacock teal. And I'm going to place a little bit on this side. I usually like to pick about 5 areas to put this stencil in. Let's see if I have an area that I really like. Okay, I want this to bridge from here about to here. Again, I'm using that circular motion, and when I get off towards the center of the design, I'm not going to have as much. See, I've just got a very small amount lost and found. Let me bring it closer to the camera so you can see what I've done so far. It's very light and dreamy looking. Next, I'm going to put an area over here that's going to be a bit stronger. And I'm just going to use peacock teal for this. I like this to go right around that little corner. Perfect. Just a little breath of paint. Now I'm going to skip over to this side. So I've got 1, 2, 3. Here's going to be the 4th. And this is going to be much smaller. And again, I might pick up a little bit of the shoreline this time because I don't want this area to have as much of a voice as some of the other areas that I've stenciled have. Okay, and finally, I'm going to go down to this lower left corner and just a little bit rounding that corner. Okay, I'm really happy with what I can see here. I'm going to run this again under the camera so you can see what I've done. And now I'm going to go to the burlap stencil, and I'm going to take a fresh brush with some white paint. Tap it off on my paper towel, and here I'm going to do just the opposite corner that I did before. I'm going to put some right across this upper right corner. And I find I have to use a little bit more paint when I'm using the white and this smaller scale stencil. A little bit more further down. There. You can see it's just a real nice contrast, but it coordinates with that corner. Next, I'm going to go down to this area. Of course, I like to have these areas alongside where my focus of the Santa face will be. Always keep one hand on your stencil so that you can control it from moving. You could tape it down, but on this small piece, I don't think it's necessary. But I'm going to pull it back. I want a little stronger color, so since it hasn't moved, I'm just going to go right over that area. And it's a little strong, but it will definitely disappear into the background once the subject matter is painted. Now let's go to this opposite side right here. Add a little bit more. Okay, that's good there. And finally, I need a couple places in the lower area. I'm going to go here, here, and I'm actually going to put a little bit in the center. Notice there's really no method to my madness as to what part of the stencil I use. I'm actually more concerned that I just don't get too much of the design on, that I'm conservative with it. And here I'm going to go around the corner, just like I did on the upper right. Okay, and finally, I'm going to put a little bit right in this area. This is just going to be a small spot. I've got a really strong spot of white there, so really it's not going to show if I do white over white. So I'm going to move it down just a tad. And some of this actually might come behind the calendar, but that's okay if it sticks out from behind. There, just a little bit of a voice. Now, as soon as your stenciling is dry, you're going to want to coat your entire surface with extender. And we're going to do the rouging along the outer edge. Again, don't use too much extender or it will cause you problems in drawing. And whenever I do a technique like this, I try to make it a habit to let it dry overnight if I can, or at least an hour or two. Sometimes I take a hairdryer to it, but it still won't have fully cured. Okay, you can see the surface is somewhat shiny. I hold it at a different angle. You can see that. Touch it with my finger, and I just get a little bit on my finger, so I know I've got about the right amount. Sorry, I forgot to turn off my messages. I have messages coming in right and left, so please excuse the dings. Okay, normally I dip my brush into extender, and I'm 3/4 inch angle, and I blot it on my paper towel. So my brush will feel damp but not wet. You can see when I pull my bristles between my fingers, I only get a little bit of oily look on my finger. That feeds the brush and helps your rouging to go a little bit longer. I'm going to start by picking up first some of our peacock teal with a touch of shoreline. You can go back and forth between any of these colors, all depending on how much strength of color you want. And I'm going to start and I'm going to darken the corners first. And that just really will drive that bright stencil into the background. When I go to this corner, I'm actually going to pick up straight peacock teal, and I'm letting that come down quite a ways. Okay, I think I need a little bit rounding this corner, a little bit on this corner as well. Don't have to do all of them, just whatever suits your mood. Part of the reason I do this is because that rouging almost acts as a frame around your painting, and it helps drive the viewer's eyes into your subject matter. Okay, finally, I'm going to go get some at this bottom. I don't want to lose what's there, but by stretching this out, this paint out on an extended background, it really pulls everything together. Finally, a little bit on this lower corner. You can add some of this color wherever you like. I want a little bit here. And if you ever get too much, like I've gotten right here, I'm going to take a mop brush and pull some of that away. I'm a little happier with that. And finally, without cleaning my brush, I'm going to pick up a small amount of dioxazine purple. And I like to add a little bit of purple at these corners. It gives a little bit of a bluish cast when you go over this when this is wet. And I think it just adds a little bit more richness of color. Oh, there's more sound effects. My dog is barking in the background if you can hear him. So life is never dull in my studio. Okay, getting some here on the bottom. Maybe a little bit on the side will do. Not a lot, but it does add some real interest to this background. Okay, when you get all those colors added, just go ahead and mop your piece. And I usually mop pulling the outside corners in towards the center. That way you'll keep the strength of color at the corners. Okay, then let me show you what next step you need to do on the second piece that I have done. Here you can see my background is done and dry. I've placed the pattern on and I've put 3 or 4 coats of white peach onto the Santa face. This is what your piece needs to look like when you come to class. Notice I've just drawn a line down the center of each letter to transfer this. If you want to go and put a line on either side, that's entirely up to you. I've just got the outside edge of the banner, the outside edge of the hat, the ball of the hat, and the brim. I've put on a couple of lines just to give some directional lines for the hair and for the beard. And finally, I've got the calendar with some lines for the pages in back. We'll be doing this other base coating in class, but it is important that you have this on. Have your pattern all traced so that when you come to class, we'll use it as we need to. I want to put the face on as a group together in class, so don't be tempted to put that on. I've got a few tips and techniques for you. So here it is, up close and personal. This is what yours needs to look like when you're ready to come to class. So anxious to see all of you. Enjoy your prep, and don't be afraid to email me if you have any questions. I will be gone from the November 20th to the 27th of November. I'm just going to get home in time from the States, from seeing my grandkids, to teach the class. So if you try to call me, you're probably not going to find me. So send me an email. I check that frequently, and I can answer your questions for you. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to seeing you on the 28th.